Once upon a time, in a forest surrounded by tall pine trees, lived a young bear named Boris. He was strong, curious, and always ready for an adventure. In the forest, every bear had something to do. They helped each other find food, build homes, and get ready for whatever the next season would bring. Leading them all was Boris's father, the biggest and the most fearless bear of them all. He made sure the bears always had what they needed, even if it meant taking what wasn't theirs. The bears had a routine. Whenever they found a hidden hive, they'd raid it and take the honey for themselves. "You'll be just like me one day," his father told Boris. "A leader must do what's necessary, even if it's hard." But as Boris grew older, he wasn't so sure. Did survival always mean taking something that didn't belong to you? One day, his father told him it was time to join the others on the honey raid. Boris had heard about these raids for years, how the bears would sniff out the hidden hives, drive the bees away, and take the honey for themselves. "That's just the way it is," his father always said. They walked for 2 days through the dense forest, where the air was heavy with the smell of pine and moss. Finally, they found it, a beehive hidden high among the branches, gleaming with honey. "Now!" his father roared. The bears charged forward, tearing into the hive with fierce determination. Bees scattered in all directions, buzzing in panic. Boris stood still, watching the chaos unfold. Then, one brave bee flew into his father's path. "Please, leave us alone," the bee begged, its tiny wings trembling. But Boris's father growled, "Step aside, or you'll regret it." The brave little bee hovered for a moment longer, but before he could move, Boris's father knocked him aside. The tiny creature trembled to the ground. Boris was shook. His heart sank as he watched the small bee struggle to stand. Something twisted inside him. This wasn't the grand adventure he'd imagined. It felt wrong. Then, when they returned to their home with jars of honey, the bears cheered and celebrated. But Boris couldn't join them. He slipped away from the noise and sat quietly beneath a tree, lost in thought. His father found him and sat down beside him. "What's wrong, son? You did well today. You'll make a fine leader one day." Boris looked down at his paws. "I don't think I want to lead like that." "What are you talking about?" his father asked, his voice sharp. Boris hesitated. I don't want to hurt the bees. It doesn't feel right to take what isn't ours." His father's eyes darkened. "That's how we survive. It's the way things have always been, son." "But what if there's another way?" Boris whispered. His father growled, "What nonsense is this? Boris, if you won't follow our ways, then you're no son of mine." And just like that, Boris made his decision. He left his home and never looked back. Boris wandered into the forest, learning how to survive on his own. The nights were long and the days were quiet. He missed his family, but he also felt something new, a strange sense of freedom. He thought maybe this was his time to be on his own for a little while, to think and figure out what kind of bear he wanted to be. As time went by and Boris grew older, he was out on one of his usual strolls through the forest when he caught a familiar scent. Honey. Oh, how he missed that smell. He followed the scent until he found a new hive, bigger than he had ever seen. Honey dripped from the comb like golden rain. For a moment, Boris thought about taking some, but instead, he turned away. "I won't do it," he whispered to himself. The next morning, something unexpected happened. When Boris woke up, he found a small jar of honey beside him. It sparkled in the soft morning light, as if someone had left it just for him. He ate the honey, and it was the most delicious honey he had ever tasted. The next morning, the same thing happened. A new jar of honey sat waiting for him. Day after day, the honey kept appearing, like little gifts. Curious, Boris decided to find out who was leaving the honey. So, he set up a gentle trap, and the next morning, he found a tiny bee caught in his net. Besides it sat a fresh jar of honey. "Please don't hurt me," the bee buzzed. I was just leaving you honey so you wouldn't take our hive." Boris smiled and carefully untangled the bee. "It's okay. I wasn't going to take anything." The little bee hovered in surprise. "You weren't?" "No," Boris said softly. "Thank you for being so kind to me. I'm Boris. What's your name?" "Bumble," the bee replied, buzzing gently. From that day on, Boris and Bumble became friends. Bumble brought honey for Boris, and in return, Boris protected the hive from other animals. They spent their days exploring the forest, and for the first time, Boris felt truly at peace. One sunny afternoon, Boris and Bumble were sitting beneath a tree when they suddenly heard the familiar rumble of bears running through the forest. The bears Boris had grown up with were on their way to raid the hive. Boris stood up, his heart pounding. "We have to stop them," he said. When the bears arrived, Boris stepped right between them and the hive. "Stop!" he called out. "There's a better way!" His father stepped forward, surprised to see his son. "Boris? Is that you?" "Yes," Boris replied. "I've been living here with the bees." His father frowned. "You belong with us, Boris, not with them." Boris shook his head. "No, I belong right here. The bees have been kind to me, and I promise to protect them." The other bears listened closely as Boris told them how the bees had shared their honey with him and helped him when he was all alone. "We don't have to steal to survive," Boris said softly. "We can live in peace. The bees will share their honey if we protect them." The other bears looked at each other, tired of the endless raids. Slowly, they nodded in agreement. Bumble buzzed happily. "I'm proud of you, Boris. You showed everyone that kindness is always the best way." Boris smiled. "It's thanks to you, Bumble. I'll never forget how you helped me when I needed it the most." And from that day on, they lived together in harmony. The bears protected the bees, and the bees shared their honey, and they all lived happily ever after. The end.